Good afternoon, NCG. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to our 1 o'clock event as part of our EDIB strategy series, which follows on this year from what I hope you all agree is a very successful LGBT plus experience, as well as a women's leadership Q&A panel. And today we come together to welcome you all to our Windrush Day panel event, and we come together to really celebrate and listen to the stories of the legacy of the Windrush generation, and really listen to the courage, resilience and contribution that helped shape modern Britain. These events are really critical to our EDIB and CG journey, and we really hope you enjoy listening to the lived experiences and the celebration of culture and heritage, and really deepen our understanding of how this important generation has influenced our communities today. We are going to be joined from colleagues across the London colleges, as well as an external person who's going to share her own experiences, and I will introduce our panel shortly. But what I most need to impress on all of our colleagues who are listening today is that this space needs to be really understood as a place that we are listening to deep personal reflections and people's personal stories and their families. So we hope that you join us then in the spirit of openness, curiosity and respect, and treat each of these stories with deep care. So without further ado, I would like now to introduce our panel. So our panellists will all come on screen, and then I will introduce them in turn. And finally, perfect. Okay, so good afternoon, panellists, and it's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to have you all here with us today. I would like to just take a bit of time to share a little bit of background on each of our panel speakers. And when I do, if I could just ask our panellists to give us a wave so we can be clear who we have in front of us. And thank you all so much for joining us today. So I'd like to start off with introducing Michelle Bent. Michelle is our ALS specialist and exams access assessor based in Lewisham College. She has a Barbadian British heritage and a strong commitment to preserving the Windrush history, and focuses on intergenerational storytelling, resilience, cultural continuity and education. And it is a privilege to have you with us today. Thank you very much, Michelle. We are also joined by Andrew Nichols. Andrew Nichols is our music lecturer at Southwark College. He has a Jamaican and English heritage with family roots in the Windrush migration, and he's going to be exploring identity, belonging, cultural legacy, and has got a particular interest in the Jamaican musical influence on British culture. So thank you, Andrew, for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we have Lloyd Miller, who is our security officer based at Lewisham College. His heritage spans Jamaican, West African and UK, and he's got a particular interest in discussing diaspora, identity, genealogy, community activism, heritage and belonging. And it's a privilege to have you with us today, Lloyd. Thank you very much for joining us. And finally, our visiting panel member, Calista Francis, who I've been referring to as Callie during our panel today, is a further education leader with over 30 years experience of promoting inclusion and opportunity for all, has a Windrush family heritage which informs her work on equity, belonging and representation, has and is a coach and director of Equal Women Championing Underrepresented Voices, and brings a perspective on inclusion, community leadership and social justice. What a panel we have here today. So thank you everyone very much for joining us. So where we are going to start, we've got some themes today that we're looking to explore. But I'd like to open up really and ask the panel to give some consideration to think about your heritage, but more specifically, what moments or memories do you feel defines you, and how's your sense of identity evolved over time? So, Callie, if I could start with you, please, and ask your contributions on that topic.
Certainly. So, just to start off with, my family are from St. Lucia. Both parents are from the Caribbean, and their story in terms of hair and heritage really begins with my father, who was trained as a maths teacher in St. Lucia, and I think that for me was something that he brought over in terms of values to us, and over here, I've always been encouraged in terms of education. It's been valued in my household, and it's something that we really share. And really thinking about my heritage, it really stemmed from home. I'm the oldest grandchild. We lived in a multi-generational home. We had music all around us, and it was really vibrant. And we speak Creole, which is a dialect of French. And that was really what I heard at home, especially being the only child at the time. So those are the things that come to mind for me when I think about my heritage and my belonging and my community.
That's wonderful, Kelly, and that sort of point that you made about music being an important part of what home seems to be something that resonates with Hannah. So I'm going to leave this actually to Andrew, to maybe to ask you, Andrew, for some of your reflections on particular moments or memories that you find defining for you.
Okay. Well, yeah. So as you said, Jamaican and English heritage. Mum was Jamaican, my dad was English, and they met working in nursing in Birmingham. And when they were married, and when I grew up, we lived in a kind of predominantly white part of Birmingham, a place called Wheely Castle. And when I went to school, primary school as well, that was, predominantly white. So I spent a lot of my time kind of basically being, the outsider, really. And so one thing that really stands out to me is Mum took me to Jamaica in 1981. I was 7 years old. And, it's the first time I'd been away or anything. And, kind of landing at Montego Bay, stepping off the plane, first of all, the heat. I mean, just completely kind of enveloping heat, is amazing, the sunshine. And then coming out of the airport and just kind of looking around, and it's just, black people everywhere. Everybody was black. Mum was black, I was black. And it's just the feeling of kind of comfort, really, comfort and feeling relaxed, which was something that I hadn't really kind of felt, in my neighbourhood when I was growing up in Birmingham.
That's beautiful, Andrew. Thank you for that. And it's just you paint such a vivid picture there, and to that vision of seeing everyone looking like you, and at such a tender age as well. So it's
It was amazing.
Yeah, and defining moment. Thank you so much for that. And Michelle, tell us about moments for you.
Okay, a lot of what's been said already really resonates with me because I grew up in a Barbadian household. I'm 100% Bajan. Both parents are from Barbados. And even before I went to Barbados, when I was about 7 years old in 1970, I already felt like a Barbadian, and I loved Barbados, mainly because when I was really small, when I'm talking sort of like 4 and above, I can actually remember my mum nearly every day braiding my hair. You know, I'd sort of like sit between her legs and she'd be there with the comb. And obviously, if I didn't hold still, I'd get a little conk on the head, keep still. And she'd be braiding my hair, but she'd be telling me stories about how she came to Britain and about her upbringing and her childhood, you know, about coming over to this country. Obviously, she used to give me lots of kisses as well. It wasn't always just the
Sounds like those moments with your mum. What
Yeah.
was like? Was there any particular stories about her journey to this country
Yes.
like to
Oh,
share?
yes. Well, my mother came over to the UK when she was 19 years old. She didn't even think before then that she was coming to the UK, but because she used to attend a church with a couple of other girls, and the vicar saw these girls and thought those girls would make lovely nurses. So basically, the vicar arranged everything for my mum and the other girls to come over to this country. He wrote the letters, organised where they were going to come and stay, organised what they were going to do in terms of their nursing careers. The only thing that they had to do themselves were get their passport and save up a little bit of money towards the fare, and £5 for when they got to this country. And it's funny because as I was driving along today, I was listening, because as I say, my mum talks a lot, and sometimes when she's talking, she now lives in Barbados, so obviously we're on FaceTime, and I often record her, and she was sort of like talking about the very first days when she came to Britain. As I say, it was 1956. It was actually July 1956. They spent 2 weeks getting here on a boat. They arrived at Southampton, got on what was known as the boat train, which took them up to a little place called Chapel-in-the-Frith in Derbyshire. The day that they got there, the Sunday night, the Monday morning, they were taken down to the town with their £5 in hand, and they bought stockings and shoes. They went back to the nursing home, which was where they were going to start training, and they had lunch. And by that afternoon, they were on the ward working. And, you know, that really impresses me about these, you know, 18, 19-year-old girls and their whole work ethic that they came up with. Yeah.
And so when we were reflecting before, Michelle, you said about the expectations that your mum and the people in her community were given by, I mean, I love the fact that, you know, through the church, she was kind of like, you'd be great at this.
Yeah.
And so could you talk to us a little bit more about those expectations and what your mum was looking forward to?
All right. Well, because they obviously, when they were at school, they were taught British history, taught very little Caribbean history, mostly taught about Britain, and they knew all the places that they'd see in London, and they knew all the names of towns, etc. They were more or less coming up here thinking, well, not so much that the streets were paved with gold, but it was a literal thing. They had sort of like 5-year plans. We're coming to Britain, we're going to work for 5 years. Money would be relatively easy to come by because they'd be working, they'd save up and go back home. But for so many people, that 5-year plan just didn't, you know, come to fruition, really. Yeah.
And the reception of mum and, you know, how she dealt with that community. Could you just
Well,
build on that?
That's really interesting, because when they were in the countryside, when they were in Chapel-in-the-Frith, they were basically seen as celebrities. You know, it was, you know, 3 West Indian girls that were all nurses. When they used to go down into town, they'd be wearing their nurses' uniforms, and people would know them. Oh, those are the girls from the Elms, you know. And if they had any tea parties in town, if they had any church services, any events, they'd often be sent tickets to attend, and people knew who they were, and they were quite well respected. So when, you know, eventually they came to London, it was a completely different story. You know, the racism, you know, my mum says she actually found it quite horrific, you know, by comparison.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. Picture of the 3 celebrities, young
Yes.
women in all their pictures.
Yeah.
It's such a stark contrast, such a sad, stark contrast.
It was a big contrast. Yeah.
To hear more from you on that point, and as we go through our panel discussion today. And And so I'd like to go to Lloyd next for me. So Lloyd, so in terms of what defines you and your maths, and you know, is there what would you like to share with us today?
Well, first and foremost, this is my flag, my design basically, and it represents me. So as you can see, Africa, which is the beginning basically, you know, my family originally obviously from West Africa, then it's the Jamaican flag, and then it's the English flag. So all of these parts represent me. My mother came to England when she was 11 years old in 1956. Before that, she never saw her mother. The last time she saw her mother was when she was 5 years old. So my mother spent time growing up with a next door neighbor, you know, before that. And then, you know, when she actually came over to England, my grandma was already married. She was remarried, you know. So my mother was coming into a new family and stuff. And she was telling me about a lot of the challenges she faced, especially when she first felt the cold. She said she was crying. She wanted to go back. She found it very hard. And the culture was very different, you know, very different from what she was used to. Even the food, you know, it was very different
Just
and stuff.
sort of the way we feel, the way we experience the world is just, and that compounds that sense of not belonging, I suppose, actually.
Yeah,
There's so
definitely.
much like different to you in such a strong way. So
Yeah,
what I'm going to share with our NCG colleagues now is that Lloyd has kindly put together a slide deck to take us through his family's story. Hope that explains your slide deck appropriately, Lloyd. It's bigger than his family, but it's a really heartfelt selection of images. So what I'd like to do now is to share that slide deck, and what Lloyd's going to do is talk about a few of those images, and there might be some moments to example. So making sure the brilliant town hall magic happens, and it does.
So
Brilliant.
this basically is my mum's passport, you know. Oh,
Sorry, Lloyd,
it's
just
kind
bear
of jump.
with me.
Yeah,
Just
that's
on the technical
yeah,
side, we can
that's
see the
okay.
next
Yeah, that's my
section.
mum's passport, and you know, and obviously she's from Jamaica, so it just represents her basically when she was first coming over to the UK. You know, that's her passport she used when she was coming over.
Thank you, Lloyd. And let's this
Yeah, that's her ticket.
So just go back to the ticket a second. How long it's so is this something that's been kept in a treasure box somewhere, or like?
Yeah, it was kept in. They used to have a suitcase, and Mum told me it was called a grip. It was called grip luggage, and you know, as you can see, it kept everything quite well. You know,
I mean, that's
yeah,
in immaculate condition. That's beautiful. Move to the next slide, please. And what's
yes,
this, Bob?
that's the vaccination card that she had to have when she was coming over.
So that this was something that all of the generation had to go through. They had to go through like
Yeah,
to take a
yeah,
big public health check or something. Oh,
yeah. Before she can come.
okay, thank you. Next slide.
That's my mum when she was 11 years old. You
Oh.
know, and yeah, when she was on her way over here, that's her passport picture.
And did she travel on her own then, Lloyd? Did she travel?
Yeah, she traveled by herself.
Wow.
And what she did is when she was traveling, so my grandma could recognize her, she asked her to wear a yellow anorak that she sent to her. You know, because it was sometimes she saw her. Because remember, she last saw her when she was 5 years old. So she wanted to identify her. So she bought her anorak from over here in England. She sent it to her so that when she was coming over, she could identify her.
Ah. Next slide, please.
Yeah. That's
So,
Mary Seacole. So, you know, Mary Seacole.
a beautiful, beautiful section tribute, isn't it?
So a lot of the pictures coming up now will be like, as I said, my parents were Jamaican and they were Rastafarians. So part of the thing, what was important for me and my mum when I was growing up, was that me and my brother learned about our African roots and our history. You know, so this is one of the places that I first went to when I went to Jamaica, which is Maroon Town. These are they were enslaved Africans, which basically fought the English, and they earned their freedom. So this, what you can see behind my head, that was actually a treaty they got from the English, you know, yeah, for their freedom.
Okay, that's wonderful. Right. So where are we
This
now?
is this is Gambia, basically, Kunta Kinte, you know, Kunta Kinte Island, basically. If anyone
why
was seeing
is
the
that-
story of Roots, yeah, that's where Kunta Kinte came from. This is in Senegal, which is known as the point of no return. So basically, the enslaved Africans was taken here, they were held until they were ready to go onto the ship. And once they go through that door behind me, that was the last time they saw Africa. That was a point of no return.
That must have been a really powerful moment for you as well. In your journey.
Yeah, it was very emotional. Very.
Yeah, must have been. Let's move to the next slide.
This is a slave cabin and a master's house, basically, in New Orleans. So these are actual slave quarters, you know, from slavery times.
And so next slide.
And these, as you can see, these are, you can see some of the people when they were slaves, how much they were sold for, how old they was, and it's like a documentation of, you know, of them. This is me teaching Black history in Gambia in school.
I'd say teaching on NCG Town Hall, we'll get you in the classrooms, Lloyd, if you're not careful. This was you actually going through like lessons on history as well.
This is some of the places that I traveled to research Black history and history around the world.
It's amazing.
And this is my African traditional wedding, basically. So during the COVID times, I was stuck in Gambia for 3.5 months. There was no time, I couldn't get back because of the COVID. So basically, I met my wife, which is in Bass, say Camilla. She's from the Wolof tribe. So to me, because of the way that I was grown up, it was important for me to hang on to my heritage, you know. So me meeting my wife, because my great uncle Archie told me that part of our family came from Senegal, and you know, they were the Mandinka tribe and the Fuller tribe, and also some of them was the Ashanti tribe from Ghana. So to me, it was important for me to hang on to my roots and my culture. So part of me getting married, I wanted to do things in a traditional way and had as much as the culture as possible. So it was a combination of Wolof wedding and Jamaican mixed in with English, because these are all who I
And
am.
your beautiful mum is the lady in the green outfit, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
There is a family likeness there. I think she's got a better smile than you, though, Lloyd, if I'm honest. So yeah, it's beautiful. This is such a special moment. And this is, I think this is your final slide, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is part of my family tree and just a part of my heritage. So you can see where some of the part where the family came from, some of the tribe that we was, before we went to Jamaica. And these are the names, basically, our family names in Jamaica, what was given to us by the slave masters.
It's amazing. Well, look, Lloyd, a massive thank you for bringing all of this together in such a beautiful format. I think it really, really helps us visualise and understand in a way that I would never have been able to grip with grasp without your really sensitive and thought-provoking contributions. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Stop sharing the slide deck now, Davil, and thank you for that. And I think the photography and capturing moments is really important. And I'm going to come to you now, because your picture behind you is particularly interesting. So for our colleagues, could you sort of share a little bit of what is going on behind you?
Yeah, so if I'll move out of the way just so you can see it properly. I'll come back. So yeah, that's mum on the ward sometime in the 60s, and she's there taking a patient's blood pressure.
So because when we spoke before, it almost looks documentary like, doesn't it? You know, it's like a moment in time. And I think going back to the point that Michelle made earlier about the expectations and, you know, to go into such a, you know, the NHS in such a strong profession, you know, how was it for you growing up with your mum sort of being in the NHS and sort of how you understood the world? Was there?
Yeah, I mean, I was proud of the work that she'd done. But I mean, when I was growing up, she'd kind of moved out of like nursing and she was working in care by that time. And so she was, you know, working in a children's home. But she always, you know, kind of worked in caring professions. So she worked in children's home. She did kind of agency work as well. So she worked at Birmingham QE Hospital and you know, the Royal Institution for the Blind. She, you know, cared for old people at Bartley Green Lodge as well. But I was always really proud of her in the work that she was doing. She was always you know, a very, very caring, you know, thoughtful, generous, you know, sweet person.
And in your kind of, when you shared with us in preparation, sort of music was a really critical part of your kind of feeling a sense of belonging in that community. Could you just explain a little bit about the music and your identity and what that meant to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, you know, Jamaican music has been massively influential, you know, around the world. Reggae in particular, you know, and following on from, you know, reggae, dub reggae and, you know, music production. But I mean, going back to reggae, you know, in the 1970s, it kind of, you know, it kind of dominated the charts and you had, you know, kind of, it kind of swept across the charts and you had a lot of kind of, you know, Western bands copying that reggae style. I mean, if you look at what, you know, the Police were doing, they were, you know, a white reggae band. You look at what the Clash were doing and some other punk bands. So it's massively influential. But then in particular, the dub, you know, mixing. So for those who don't know what dub is, um, they're like instrumental remixes of the original tracks. So you might have an artist go in the studio and they'd record a song in the studio that'd be released, and then the engineer would do what's called a version of it. So they'd play the tape back through the desk and they would probably kind of focus much more on the bass and drums, call it the rhythm. Yeah, and then there'd be kind of maybe like bringing bits of the other rhythm section, like the guitar or the keyboards, kind of in and out of the mix by muting it. Vocals kind of in and out of the mix, sending that into what's called an echo. So an echo gives a kind of repeat. So they'd have this kind of constant, like sometimes things not playing, then being sent into an echo, which makes it repeat. And then there'd
And
be.
for you, Andrew, you know, sort of having that, you know, like, what did the reggae sound mean to you? Like, was that something that your parents played at home, or, you know what I mean? Like, how did that resonate? Like, what was that link for you with the sounds?
Yeah, that was more something that I got through my sister, my older sister. You know, mum and dad. Mum didn't really play that much music at home, and she liked stuff like kind of old rock and roll and, you know, like a bit of Irish music and church music. My dad liked quite straight sort of, you know, middle of the road sort of stuff like, you know, Phil Collins and things like that. But my sister, my older sister, she was a Rasta. And so she moved down to London, but she left some of her records. So all this stuff like, you know, Lee Perry and Prince Far-I. Prince Far-I in particular was probably my first introduction into, you know, reggae, dub reggae, and these really kind of wild, kind of sci-fi sounds, you know.
Oh, okay. And so I'd like to go to Michelle. Michelle, you brought something quite special along with you today.
I hope that people will be able to see it. Now,
for a moment or two, that looks good to me. Yeah.
There you go.
So
now, you probably won't be able to see very much of this, but this is my father's original passport that he came to the UK with, and they also have my mother's. Point out at the top, it says British passport, It was a British passport, and it's got the you know, the coat of arms. And they were British citizens. This is before independence. They were issued with British passports. In actual fact, their flag was the Union Jack with just a little emblem of a different coat of arms that signified Barbados. So a lot of the Caribbean islands still had the Union Jack with a different sort of like little coat of arms in the corner, you know, sort of like which was depicted their particular country. But yeah, both my parents came in the 50s, both came in 1956, one in June, one in July, and they both came on British passports. As I say, they were invited here, and this is what got them here. My mum came by boat and my dad came by plane, you know.
And your picture behind you.
Yes. Right, now let's see if I can get this right now. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's my mum, this person here. It is when, it's funny, it's got a little story here as well. When my mum first came to Britain, she thought she was coming directly to do nursing, but it so turned out that she came to do auxiliary work. And she only found that out by chance. That was because one of the other girls had another relative that was actually going into college, into lecture rooms and studying to be a nurse. And the girls thought, well, why aren't we doing that too? So the same vicar that had brought them here, they approached him because by now he was back in the UK, and they approached him and they said, well, we're not doing what we thought we were coming here to do. What are you going to do about it? So he wrote to a different hospital. So they moved from Chapel in the Frith down to Hampshire. So they got to go to a new hospital. That's where they started learning, you know, the art of nursing. And she was there for 2 years, and this is her. I'm going to move out the way. That's her graduation picture. That's when she did her SEN. She went further for another year. I've got another graduation picture where she did her SRN. But it's funny, many years later, when the nurses started talking, they found that there was sort of like, you know, this whole disparity between being an auxiliary and an SRN and an SEN, because obviously the qualification that you obtained only allowed you to go so far. If you're an auxiliary or an SEN, you couldn't move into management, you know, but obviously if you were an SRN, you could move into the senior roles. So it was one of these things that, you know, obviously when people got here and they started to investigate further, it was one of the things that held quite a lot of the nurses back from getting further along in their profession. And it also held them back somewhat that if they wanted to go back to the Caribbean, they didn't have a strong enough qualification to sort of like work back in the hospital back there. Yeah, so it was a bit.
You know, when you're describing, you know, the fact that, you know, what you're being presented isn't the reality and being an auxiliary, but it sounds like your mum was a very determined woman.
Yes, they were.
She carried on.
Yeah.
You know, so quite, you know, quite a strong legacy that she leaves for us all, actually.
Yeah.
And I think on legacy, I think I'm going to come to Callie next, really, about the legacy that the Windrush, you know, what does it mean to you, Callie, personally? And what do you think people most need to understand about Windrush generation?
I think the legacy is immense in terms of what it's contributed to this country. I'm particularly hearing these stories about real resilience, real, you know, really sticking with it when people were clearly not wanting you in the country, in their organisation, holding you back, etc. No recognition of the qualifications, hard work that you've put in, and come. And in talking to all three of the colleagues here, I can really resonate with that. As I said before, my father was a trained maths teacher in St. Lucia, and he came over here and found that none of his qualification counted, none of his experience counted, and basically he had to start all over again. And doors were shut. very similarly to Michelle's story. Doors were very much closed to him, but he didn't stop. He kind of like valued being over here. He respected whatever it was he needed to do. And so he diversified. He became a bus conductor. He was a bus conductor for 34 years, very well respected. He taught me the meaning of really working hard. I've told this story many a time, the great storms of 87. I remember being woken up at 5 o'clock in the morning when Dad was going to work. I slept through the storms, but being told that no matter what I did, I needed to go to school. And I was about 3 miles away from my secondary school. Of course, no buses, no trains. We walked. And I got there. I convinced one of my friends to come with me. I got there, and of course, there was a notice on the gate saying, no school today. Our teachers can't get in. But I think that legacy of staying with it, valuing education, hard work is really what's brought me to where I am today, and continues to live on in loads of people that I know of that heritage.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you for sharing that story. And I think, Lloyd, getting to know you in preparation for the discussion this afternoon, you've spent a lot of time researching the history of Windrush and also much broader than that. You know, when you think about the legacy, what do you want people to take away and think about?
I think the Windrush was they're trendsetters basically. You know, they're our version of this the civil rights movement, you know, and they went through a lot of things in order to get us to where we are today, you know, so we have to take off our hats to them, you know, but definitely they are the legacy, because without them there would be no us, you know, and so it's about us learning and keeping the history alive so the young people could understand, you know, what we've been through to get to where we are today and what we continue to go through, but at the same time they understand the journey, because that's the most important thing, you know. It wasn't easy, you know. All of us have our own different stories, you know, of what our parents, our grandparents went through to get us where we are today, you know. So all I could do is take off my hat to them, you know.
But I think that's a really beautiful tribute, Roy, because that, you know, when people are brave and they go on that journey to make that difference, and the fact that, you know, you're so kind of, you understand their journey so well, and you've kind of gone back in their footsteps almost, and you trace that. And I think that the work that you've done there is a real tribute to them, and I'm sure, you know, they've been very proud of everything you've done
Yeah,
there.
no, thank you. I feel like I had to, because part of being here, one of the hardest things was fitting in, because I didn't know where I felt like I fitted, because my parents, obviously, I was the first generation of my family to be born here. So you know, I didn't feel like I was Caribbean enough at the time, and I didn't feel like I was English. So, you know, so I had to, you know, and when my mum, as a young child, as I said before, she took me and my brother to Saturday school from the age of 5, because it was important for us to learn our history, learn our identity, learn who we are, you know. So from that, I just kind of took the rouse, and I wanted to learn more, you know, so that I can tell my story, you know, and I could understand more about our people, you know.
And that kind of not fitting is something, Andrew, you shared your cultural heritage about being British and American, and you know that piece. Where has that took you as an educator, as a teacher? Do you know what I mean? Does that inform the way you work in a way that that leads back to that legacy?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can really what's the word, kind of resonate with all the students. You know, I can kind of tie into, you know, like any student's musical background and always find either some kind of common ground or something to kind of show them or inspire them. And certainly in the actual teaching, you know, the music tech, music production teaching, I do draw quite heavily on, you know, Jamaican mixing styles when we're, you know, doing our mixes. You know, I mean, Jamaica basically invented the concept of the remix. So, you know, like the first remixes were those dub remixes. You know, the idea of taking an existing commercial recording and then kind of reworking it for the dance. You know, for the sound system. You know, on the Saturday night. So that was before disco. And then, you know, the kind of extended 12 inches and, you know, kind of before, you know, like, you know, the remixes that we know today, which is where people might take a track and change the beats and kind of remix into a different style.
I want to find out if Andrew has a house bar is, and I think we should extend some invitation. But Misha, coming to you about this legacy piece, you know, like you can see, you know, the meaning of cultural heritage and the challenges that that's had for you and your family. What do you want future generations to take from the Windrush generation?
Right, that the generation of my parents, they were pioneers. You know, they actually came here and didn't know what to expect to an extent, and they made the most of what they could. They made the most of the experience, and sometimes it was against the odds, really, you know, because back in the day they came when there were notices on the door saying, was it no blacks, no dogs, you know? Yeah. So you know, what they do is they save their money and buy their own properties to live in. You know, that great partner scheme where everyone would put in, you know, sort of like £5 or whatever, and each week somebody different would get that money. That's how my parents managed to get their first home in Walthamstow through saving up through a partner scheme, you know, and being able to buy their own property there. Yeah.
I suppose so. We're coming to the end of our Q&A now. We've got the last few minutes, and it really is important to think about looking forward. And what kind of messages would we like our colleagues across MCG to take away from our sharing today? I don't know if I could start with you, maybe some final thoughts.
Didn't hear what you said.
Sorry, I
Sorry.
didn't catch
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
No, I didn't catch
Should
that
I
either.
You asking
right, apologies. So we're in our last few minutes. Can you hear me now? Yeah.
Mhm.
In our last few minutes of our Q&A panel, I'm really looking forward to the future. What would you like our colleagues across MCG to be the big takeaways from our discussion today?
I think it's important to acknowledge everybody's history and culture. You know, I think that sometimes we deceive people and we don't understand what they've been or where they've been through to get to where they are. We just assume that, you know, okay, that's him, you know, but so I think it's a beautiful thing. And we thank you guys for today, to be honest with you, because it's important for us to tell our stories, you know, and to keep the thing going, you know.
That's very generous of you, Lord. Thank you very much for that. And from the rest of the group, is there any final comments or messages for our colleagues across MCG?
I think just reiterating, it's that kind of the importance of the recognition of the contribution to you know, people from you know, British former colonies who were invited to come over and help Britain rebuild after the war, and the, you know, the massive input that these people had in helping, you know, Britain rebuild and kind of, you know, become kind of basically, you know, what it is today.
Well, I think that, is there any final points that Michelle or Tammy would like to make?
Can I share a poem with you?
Yes.
Okay, right now, Barbadians are known as Bajans. So here we go. This poem's called Bajans, a Broad Gathering. I'm a Bajan, here I stand. African foreparents stolen from the motherland. Yes, a Bajan, here I stand. because my parents were invited to England. Pride and industry were their main aims. Them men had no time for no foolish games. They called them the Windrush generation. But them in coming a rush of wind, they were invited in. Some came by sea, some came by air, some with a smile to mask doubt and fear. History meant that they gathered back then, Bajans abroad in the United Kingdom. They couldn't even find a room to rent, so they saved every penny, every last cent, purchased houses and helped one another. Other Caribbean people became we brother. We children, we had it tough. We were abused at school. The people called us names and treated us cruel. But we overcame, Bajans abroad. Many climbed the ladder of success and gained reward. Now we're gathering once again, both the young and the old, to tell our tales, let the stories unfold. Tales of when we said goodbye to the gem of the Caribbean Sea. Tales of when we thought we'd die from cold in a new country. Now we're gathering again to celebrate our culture and our history.
Oh. Love that, Rachel. What a way to finish that. I know. I think, Kelly, I think that was just perfect. Oh,
I
yeah.
can't say anything after that. I can't follow that at all. That's brilliant,
I'd like
Michelle.
to do a massive thank you to our panelists, a massive thank you to everyone who supported the panelists, Assistant Principal Molly Winston, Assistant Principal Tracy Andrews, and both Suffolk and Lewisham Colleges, everyone went before this. It's really special what you shared. I'm sure all I would say on behalf of everyone at BCG, thank you very much for your time, and let this be the start of many other storytelling around the legacies of this community. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.